Hello, you're watching Initiative Africa. My name is Haissous. Welcome to your weekly magazine featuring Africa on the move through smart innovations and initiatives that work. Today, we take stock of the situation of Somali refugees, and with our guest, we look at Africa's urban challenges. But first, here are the main highlights. An architect and urban planner, this young Moroccan became involved very early in crafting innovative solutions for more inclusive and sustainable cities in Africa. Just this year, she took part in a residency for 20 Moroccan professionals and students organized by the Je m'engage pour l'Afrique incubator, aiming to rethink the future of cities. Rajae Haissous is our guest today.
We looked at 4 themes: mobility, governance, employment and tourism.
A new humanitarian scandal after Ethiopia. It's now Somalia's turn to be accused of malpractice in refugee camps.
There is nothing to eat here and we are hungry. From the morning until this time, we didn't eat.
Watché, an African Cantonese rice, is becoming one of Togo's most popular dishes, and it's all thanks to the Coopérative des Femmes Vaillantes, which has figured out how to supply better quality rice.
Cette activité a permis aux membres de la coopérative d'améliorer leurs revenus et de ne plus sentir la pauvreté.
What exactly is going on in the Somali refugee camps? A month ago, the European Union announced the suspension of its aid to the country due to allegations of misappropriation. Specifically, UN investigators discovered that funds intended for the most vulnerable refugees were being misspent by landowners, local authorities, members of the security forces, and even aid workers. 80% of European aid was prepaid and has already been disbursed. Our correspondent in Somalia, Abdulkadir Fuday, reports on the situation of the refugees who could have done without this new scandal. Take a look.
The drought in Somalia has left many people in the IDP camps near Mogadishu struggling to survive. With humanitarian aid running low, long-established families have started small businesses to cope with the crisis. They don't expect to earn a lot of money, but even $2 a day can make a difference for those who face harsh conditions and limited assistance. Running a business in a weak economy is not easy. Customers are scarce and sometimes there are no sales at all. It takes a lot of perseverance and patience to keep going.
I have 7 children, and since we don't have anything else, we managed to make a living from this. We previously fled the drought in Kurtunwari district, and we also need urgent aid, because this is not enough to support 7 children. So we please our brothers to help us.
Abdullah, who has become the breadwinner after separating from her husband, can now manage to cook something for her children by the end of the day. For her, feeding the family is of paramount importance. She undertakes a task that is challenging for many others in the same camp. The drought crisis in the Horn of Africa nation has worsened as more families arrive at the camp, hoping to find water and food. However, they could face a shortage of aid as the European Union has halted its humanitarian support after a UN report revealed corruption and mismanagement of the funds meant for the drought victims. The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, UNOCHA, reported in August that the number of people affected by severe drought increased from 7.8 million in January to 8.3 million in March 2023.
There is nothing to eat here and we are hungry. From the morning until this time, we didn't eat. That is our situation. We need help, and an urgent one. We only rely on water. We are here for 7 days. I fled the drought with my 10 children. No water, no food, and we are also sick. And we can't get medicine here. No shelter as well. We face a lot of problems, so help us.
The camp leaders who oversee the distribution of aid and assist the newcomers to settle in warn the situation will deteriorate further if no additional aid arrives.
No organization helped these people. We request our Muslim brothers and humanitarian agencies to aid them. They don't have shelter, they don't have food and water, and no health care for the sick ones.
These camps on the outskirts of the capital are hosted by private landowners who welcome those escaping the drought. They usually receive help from the UN and Arab humanitarian agencies. The authorities are relying on the aid from those organizations and the local businessmen. Officials from the Somali Disaster Management Agency say the government is committed to doing everything in its power to help those in need.
Somali government generally contributes according to its capacity to help those people. There is little due to the economic challenges in the country, but we help them in our ability. This humanitarian limited support caused a huge effect. As you know, there is food price hiking in the world because of Ukraine-Russia war. And to top it all off, floods plagued Somalia in the harvest season.
In the face of limited humanitarian support and economic conditions that hamper the ability of the Somali government to provide necessary assistance, the hopes of people like Abdullah remain limited to earning $2 per day to bring joy to her children.
Well, it's time now to catch up with Moroccan architect and urban planner Rajae Haissous. She was one of the participants in a residency organized this year in France by the public policy incubator dedicated to Euro-African relations, Je m'engage pour l'Afrique. After 3 months of reflection and the theme of the attractiveness of African cities, particularly secondary ones, the 20 or so participants shared their recommendations in a book, Nouvelle Voix. Rajae Haissous told Laurent Soustras and Thierry Schiller about her experience.
Rajae Haissous, hello. This summer, you just finished a 3-month residency with around 20 young African and French professionals and students. Tell us about it.
So, GMA, Je m'engage pour l'Afrique is first and foremost a public policy incubator, and in fact, they organized a residency. We chose online training courses and debated and exchanged ideas on a critical theme, the attractiveness of secondary African towns. We looked at 4 themes: mobility, governance, employment, and tourism. We were divided into 4 groups to work on these themes. For my part, I was interested in the governance of cities in Africa.
What did you learn from this experience? The aim was to encourage young people to participate as citizens and to strengthen their influence with public and private decision makers. Is that exactly easy? Has the program lived up to its promises?
It's been an enriching experience. I've had the opportunity to meet people from different backgrounds, countries in Africa, and people based here in France. And we've learned a lot from each other, and we've also forged links. That's going to bring us closer together now, but also professionally and in the future. In fact, in the case of the town of Benguirir, we focused mainly on the issue of governance. Our initiative consisted of putting in place a new governance tool that would be innovative and inclusive, and also in line with the development vision of the town itself. So we thought of 2 ways. First, through the creation of a local development committee, which will take place in a physical space, and also through the setting up of a digital platform which will be collaborative, accessible and easy to use, and which will facilitate interactions between citizens and public services and also businesses. We believe in this project and we believe in the potential of this platform to create a dynamic for change that will be positive and sustainable. Above all, by improving the speed of interactions and exchanges and by improving accessibility to the data that is important, meaning that this needs to be shared between all the players in the city and its citizens. What sets our initiative apart is that it will initially take place in a physical space and will gradually evolve into a digital platform to facilitate the continuity of exchanges and collaborations.
In concrete terms, can you give me an example of the type of problem that this platform could detect on the theme of governance?
One point we identified in the town of Ben Gueria is that there's sometimes a lack of collaboration between the various players in a city and a lack of communication with young people. The town of Ben Gueria has a population of 100,000 and many development projects, but we've noticed that the local population only partially benefits from the spin-offs of these projects. This platform is going to give young people access, for example, the opportunity to find actually new possibilities to work with local businesses, with stakeholders, with public services. The aim is to create synergies between these players to find solutions to employment, sustainable development issues, local mobility.
Par rapport aux questions de développement durable, par rapport à la question des mobilités sur place, etc.
It is actually quite a cross-cutting vision. Through the platform, we are going to try to bring together all the players so that we can actually think about development that will be inclusive and also with a perspective, as I said, that is cross-cutting and global.
You are also involved in the Innovation Network for Africa to promote innovative solutions for more inclusive and sustainable African cities. What are the major obstacles facing African cities?
One of
the first obstacles we're currently facing, and that will be living in the next 30 years, is mainly this desire for urbanization. Very soon, the number of people living in African cities will double or even triple over the next 30 years. So it's a challenge that brings us face to face with the reality of having to house a large number of inhabitants and of being able to find solutions in terms of mobility that will be also smart and gentle. It's going to meet both the current needs and the future needs of local residents. So it's this issue in particular that is the most significant challenge. Of course, along with everything that has to do with the social dimension, meaning preparing the social and environmental infrastructure that will accommodate all these inhabitants.
But
in the face of this challenge, there's another question that we try to address during the residency, is to develop the intermediate towns in Africa, or the secondary towns. We've already dealt with several cities during our residency, including 3 African cities, particularly Ben Gueria. And so the idea is to develop these intermediate cities so that we can reduce the pressure on the big ones and also the big metropolises and reduce immigration to these cities. We're going to create secondary towns that will be able to offer all the opportunities, all the services and all the infrastructures, and that will be in the middle of the rural and urban environment.
Welcome to the second part of our show. I'm now bringing you to Anié, 200 kilometers north of Lomé in Togo. It's right here that the Coopérative des Femmes Vaillantes has taken up the challenge of bringing consumers better quality long-grain rice to cook a tasty Watché. This West African breakfast based on parboiled rice and beans is very popular but requires rice without kernels. Thanks to improved equipment and a transplanting farming technique provided by an ECOWAS program, these women have been able to meet the challenge and improve their incomes. Let's watch it.
West Africans in general are crazy about Watché for breakfast. The Togolese are no exception. The recipe for this African fried rice, some beans, the rest is a well-guarded secret. Watché is certainly not made with just any rice. It is prepared with parboiled rice, and that makes all the difference. That is the source of the relished Watché fragrance and flavor. In Anié, 200 kilometers north of Lomé, Togo, the makeshift sheds never empty in the morning. Everyone is entitled to his or her dish of Watché. Yet some consumers have reservations as to its quality because of the occasional little stones or sand found in their plate, and the choosiest among them prefer long-grain rice of better quality. Ebiro Kadokali and her Femme Vaillante cooperative here in Anié have been at it 7 years, seeking to satisfy those demanding customers.
Avec le riz que nous transformons à Anié ici, vous avez la même saveur et le même arôme si vous voulez manger du vrai Watché. La différence, c'est que nous utilisons une étuveuse avec laquelle nous avons un riz sans brisure et un riz très propre.
A parboiler is simply a kind of giant metal strainer placed on a pot with water. Once on fire, the steam generated parboils the rice at gentle heat.
Avant, quand on n'avait pas l'étuveuse, on mettait directement le riz non décortiqué dans la marmite, ce qui nous faisait perdre plus de 3 kilos sur 100 kilos. Mais quand on a eu l'étuveuse, nous avons 0% de perte sur 100 kilos et nous avons aussi un gain en temps.
The Femme Vaillante of Anié learned the parboiler technique through the West Africa Agricultural Productivity Program, WAP.
Le PPAO nous a formés sur comment utiliser une étuveuse. Après quoi, ils nous ont donné un kit composé d'une marmite et d'une étuveuse, ce qui a changé du coup nos habitudes.
Thanks to this equipment, Ebiro and her Femme Vaillante cooperative of Anié changed course, became more competitive, and have access to more customers. One person who immediately took to their rice is Sister Georgette, member of a local congregation.
Tu ajoutes un peu d'oignon, un peu d'huile, c'est super.
Watché is served on all occasions. Sister Georgette is expecting guests in the evening, but she will run out of stock.
Vous tombez bien, donc je vais prendre ça.
There is definitely a market for parboiled rice. Demand for it is incessantly high, according to Watché producers. But how are they to get enough rice to meet it? The traditional farming methods do not always yield the volume needed. So the Femme Vaillante of Anié took to rice transplanting and now swear only by that technique.
Avant, on faisait semis par poquet, semis à la volée, et c'est à peine que tu peux trouver 2 tonnes à l'hectare. Mais aujourd'hui, avec le repiquage, on va jusqu'à 6 à 7 tonnes par hectare, ce qui nous a permis d'augmenter aussi nos revenus. Donc cette technique, je l'ai apprise au cours d'une formation que PPAO m'a permis de suivre au Mali.
The Femme Vaillante now champion rice transplanting, urging farmers to adopt it. It certainly is worth the effort. Their rising incomes prove so.
Cette activité a permis aux membres de la coopérative d'améliorer leurs revenus et de ne plus sentir la pauvreté. Personnellement, je suis veuve. À partir de cette activité, je subviens aux besoins de toute ma famille et mes enfants aussi vont à l'école à base de cette activité.
Ebiro and her fellow workers now think big.
Notre ambition, c'est d'avoir un centre d'étuvage en bonne et due forme si les moyens nous le permettent. Comme cela, nous allons augmenter la quantité de transformation pour satisfaire les demandes.
And we're back with our guest, Rajae Haissous, for the second part of her interview in which she discusses the challenges of rebuilding in her native Morocco following the earthquake of September 8th. Take a look.
Rajae Haissous, you are a Moroccan architect who has become an urban planner. How did this professional interest come about?
En fait,
Well, first of all, I always wanted to be an architect, and I've always considered myself as an architect, thinking about building and designing people's needs.
Des bâtiments, de réfléchir aux besoins des citoyens, mais dans un premier temps, c'était
But at the beginning, it was to believe on an architectural scale, on a very limited scale. During my studies, I became increasingly interested in urban development issues.
Je me suis intéressée de plus en plus, c'est-à-dire aux questions du développement des villes, questions de la sociologie.
Urban sociology and so on. It opened my eyes to more significant problems, and I felt that I would have a greater impact by taking an interest in the urban scale.
J'ai senti qu'en fait, j'aurais un plus grand impact en m'intéressant à l'échelle urbaine et en réfléchissant à des questions à la fois
to think about social, environmental and economic issues.
Environnementales, économiques. Donc c'est venu vraiment naturellement.
It came naturally, and I felt that by working on the urban and the territorial scale, I would be able to evolve even more.
Évoluer encore plus, m'intéresser à des questions qui me dépassent.
To take an interest in issues that go beyond me and to be able to debate on the current and future scenes of cities, be it Moroccan cities.
Et aussi futures des villes, que ce soit des villes au Maroc.
Still, I'm also interested in African cities in general.
En général.
An earthquake recently hit your country, and with each disaster comes a question of the solidity of housing structures. Will this also be the starting point for discussing this subject in Morocco?
C'est déjà le cas. Donc, en fait, on a eu...
Well, that's already the case. In fact, we had quite a few debates that started just after the earthquake and with a call for expertise from all the architects in Morocco.
Pour expertise de tous les architectes du Maroc, ils se sont portés volontaires pour aider et participer.
We volunteered to help and take part in this debate.
On a eu aussi l'intervention pas uniquement d'architectes, mais aussi d'ingénieurs.
We also had contributions from architects, engineers and specialists in earthquake-resistant and earth construction.
Et aussi des spécialistes de la construction en terre. Donc, juste pour préciser, les constructions qui ont été affectées par le
So, to clarify, the buildings affected by the earthquake were earth-built dwellings, most of which are based in rural areas.
Pour la plupart basés, c'est-à-dire dans le monde rural. Donc, je tiens aussi à préciser une question.
So what matters in terms of a structure's solidity is not really the material itself, but the construction processes above all.
Mais ce sont surtout les procédés de construction. Donc, pour le cas de la construction en terre.
So in the case of earth construction, it's a material that's already solid and has many qualities, both technical and in terms of thermal insulation, and it's also very well suited to the region that was hit by the earthquake.
Très adapté à la région qui a été touchée par le séisme. Mais là encore, actuellement, on est en train de...
But here again, we're currently trying to develop this earth construction process
ce procédé de construction en terre
so that it is just as suitable and resistant in the event of an earthquake or any other disaster that may occur.
De séisme ou quelle que soit la catastrophe qui peut survenir. Donc, le débat actuellement, il se focalise sur...
The debate is currently focusing on earth construction processes. At the moment, we're mainly at the stage of making a diagnosis and accessing the current state of construction so that we can come up with solutions that are adapted to local lifestyles and populations.
Pour pouvoir apporter des solutions qui seront adaptées au mode de vie local et aux populations. Et ensuite, on va passer bien sûr à l'étape.
Then we'll move on to the design and reflection stage.
Il y a aussi actuellement la mise en place ou l'élaboration d'un
prototype of a type.
De village type.
A village is currently being set up or developed with the architects on site and also with engineers.
The impact of climate change is also a significant issue. How can architecture help the people of Africa to adapt?
Les matériaux, mais aussi les modes de construction.
Materials, construction methods, architecture and urban planning all play an enormous part in this transition. Cities are currently being used as labs for experimentation towards a greener way of life.
Vers un mode de vie qui sera plus écolo par rapport aux espaces.
With green spaces that also reduce the feeling of heat.
Réduisent également le ressenti de
and the greenhouse effect.
À l'effet de serre également. Donc,
so both architecture and urban planning are key areas in the ecological transition and response to climate change.
Dans la transition écologique et dans la réponse face au changement climatique.
What can architecture and urban planning do to help the continent overcome an economic and social crisis that is pushing many people towards immigration? Is rethinking the city a promise of solution in terms of mobility, tourism, governance, and employment?
In fact, what's interesting about cities is their complexity and the fact that each dimension or theme is directly linked to the others.
Et en lien direct avec les autres. Si on prend par exemple la question de la gouvernance.
If we take the question of governance, for example, then it affects mobility, housing and other issues.
Et d'autres thématiques. Et en fait, cette complexité fait que pour...
This complexity means that to think about cities and future sustainable cities, we need to think about all these issues.
Il faut vraiment penser à toutes ces thématiques But
globally, if I'm currently thinking about mobility, then mobility-related issues also affect housing and employment.
So having
this global vision at every stage of our thinking is essential. It's also important to involve as many professionals as possible, including economists, sociologists, town planners, and architects. So these issues affect us all and the general public. It is a fundamental lever in the creation of sustainable cities. It's the citizens. The citizens also have their say because it's for them that we design buildings. It's for them that we create today's cities. And above all, as I said, the development of secondary cities and that these solutions can bring. I think that the promise of future cities in Africa is in fact secondary cities. So no matter where you're based in Africa, you must have access to employment, opportunities, to mobility that is both gentle and then, of course, accessible to all the social services. So we need to think together as young people, as citizens. This debate concerns us all.
Rajae, Haissous, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Well, that's it. Initiative Africa is over for today. You can find the interview of Rajae Haissous as well as our programs on our website, africaonair.com. And of course, feel free to follow us on all our social networks and to like, share and comment with the hashtag Initiative Africa. And don't forget to tune in next week, same time, same channel for a new episode of Business Africa. Have a great week.